The jungle was alive, but not in the way a normal jungle should be. Every tree looked like it could move. Every vine looked like it was waiting to strike. The air was heavy with mist, glowing faintly green from strange plants that pulsed with light. Somewhere in the distance, something growled low and hungry. A lone human moved carefully between the giant roots. His name was Daniel. He carried only a short blade and a small pack on his back. He was not on this planet by choice. His ship had crashed days ago, and now he was searching for water, food, and maybe a way out of this living nightmare. Daniel wiped the sweat from his face. The air was too thick, too hot, and smelled of rotting flowers. He kept telling himself to move slowly, to watch every step because here the ground itself could try to eat you. He had already seen plants with teeth, plants that spat acid, and plants that hissed when he came close. This was no ordinary jungle. This was a trap built by nature itself. Then he froze. A sound cut through the mist. A scream, high-pitched, terrified. It was not the sound of any animal. It was the sound of someone calling for help. Daniel's heart pounded. He had not seen another living person since the crash. Could it be another survivor? Could it be a trap? His instincts told him both were possible, but his human heart would not let him stand still. He ran toward the sound. The mist grew thicker as he pushed through giant leaves bigger than his body. He slipped on wet moss, but he kept going. The scream came again, weaker this time, followed by the sound of something snapping, like bones or thick wood breaking. Daniel burst into a clearing and froze in horror. At the center of the clearing stood a monstrous plant. Its stem was as thick as a tree trunk, its surface wet and slimy. From its base, giant vines whipped across the ground like snakes, and at the top there was a gaping mouth lined with fleshy teeth dripping with green slime. The mouth opened and closed, sucking the air like a beast breathing. Inside that terrible mouth was a girl. She was alien, but also strangely human-like. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the green mist. She had long hair the color of midnight and eyes wide with terror. She was already halfway inside the monster, her arms flailing as the vines dragged her deeper. She screamed again, but her voice was muffled as the jaws closed around her chest. Daniel's body moved before his mind could think. He charged forward, blade in hand. The plant reacted instantly. Several vines shot toward him, snapping through the air like whips. Daniel ducked under one and rolled to the side, slicing at another as it came close. The blade cut deep and green fluid splashed across his arm, burning like acid. He gritted his teeth and ignored the pain. The girl's hand reached out weakly, trembling. She was almost gone. Only her head and one arm remained outside the mouth. If Daniel hesitated even 1 second, she would vanish into the monster's stomach forever. "Hold on," he shouted, though he knew she might not understand his words. He leapt forward, slashing wildly at the vines. One wrapped around his leg, pulling hard, but he drove the blade down and cut through it. He grabbed the girl's arm with his free hand and pulled. The plant let out a horrible screech, a sound that shook the leaves in the trees. Its mouth clamped harder, refusing to let go of its prey. Daniel pulled with all his strength. The slime burned his hands, the vines wrapped tighter around his chest, but he refused to let go. The girl's eyes locked with his. There was fear in them, yes, but also a spark of hope. With one last desperate swing, Daniel drove the blade deep into the plant's mouth, cutting into its soft inner flesh. The monster roared, its vines thrashing wildly, but its grip loosened just enough. Daniel yanked the girl free, both of them falling hard onto the mossy ground. The plant shrieked, shaking violently, vines smashing into the ground around them. Daniel rolled over the girl, shielding her with his body as one vine slammed into the earth where her head had been a moment before. Breathing hard, he dragged her to her feet. She was weak, coughing, her body trembling. Slime covered her, burning faintly where it touched her skin. "Move," Daniel barked, pointing toward the trees. Together they stumbled into the jungle as the monstrous plant thrashed in fury behind them. Daniel could still hear its roar as they ran, echoing through the mist, a sound that promised it would not forget the prey it had lost. When they finally stopped, far from the clearing, the girl collapsed against a tree, gasping for air. Daniel crouched beside her, his blade still in hand, his body shaking from both exhaustion and adrenaline. For the first time, he looked at her closely. Despite her alien features, her face carried an expression he understood very well: fear, relief, and the fragile hope of someone who had been saved at the last second. The jungle was still alive around them, whispering, waiting. But Daniel knew one thing for certain: He was no longer alone. The jungle did not forgive weakness. Daniel knew this from the first day his ship had fallen here. Yet now, with the alien girl barely breathing beside him, he realized that saving her had only been the beginning. The monstrous plant would not stop. These jungles had more than one predator, and once you were marked, the entire forest seemed to turn against you. Daniel crouched near the girl, scanning the shadows. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the green mist, but her body shook with exhaustion. Her clothes were torn, covered in sticky slime, and angry burns marked her arms where the plant's acid had touched her. She coughed weakly, trying to push herself up, but her strength was gone. "You're safe," Daniel said quietly, even though he wasn't sure she understood. "You're safe for now." A loud rustle came from behind them. Daniel spun, blade ready. Vines thicker than his arms slithered across the ground, searching, hunting. The monster was dragging itself out of the clearing, refusing to give up its stolen meal. Its roar shook the branches above, birds and smaller creatures fleeing in panic. Daniel's heart raced. He could not fight it in the open, not while carrying the girl. He had to outsmart it. Humans, after all, had always survived not because of strength but because of cunning. He grabbed the girl under her arms. She let out a soft gasp of pain but clung to him weakly, her body trembling. Step by step, Daniel pulled her deeper into the jungle, weaving between thick roots and giant ferns. Behind them, the monstrous plant dragged its bulk forward, tearing smaller trees apart as it came. The vines lashed through the air. One whipped past Daniel's face, slicing the air so close he felt the wind cut his cheek. Another wrapped around his ankle, pulling hard. He stumbled, nearly falling with the girl in his arms. With a sharp grunt, he brought his blade down, cutting the vine. Green acid splashed, hissing against the ground, eating through moss and stone. The girl's eyes widened. She whispered something in her own tongue, words Daniel didn't understand, but the fear in her voice was clear. "Don't look back," Daniel muttered. "Just breathe. I'll handle this." They stumbled into another clearing. Strange glowing mushrooms lit the ground with a blue light, casting eerie shadows. Daniel stopped. He couldn't keep running forever. The monster was faster, and it could strike from a distance with its vines. He needed a plan. He gently lowered the girl against a tree. She slumped, gasping, her hand clutching her chest. Daniel looked at her burns, raw, red, and painful. He wanted to help, but there was no time. Already the vines were slithering into the clearing, wrapping around trunks, searching. Daniel's eyes darted around. Then he saw it, one of the mushrooms pulsing with light, but instead of glowing softly like the others, it shivered violently, releasing small sparks. He remembered what had happened when he had touched one earlier. It had exploded with fire, nearly burning his hand off. That was it. A trap. Daniel quickly tore off a strip of cloth from his sleeve, wrapping it around the hilt of his blade. He stabbed one of the trembling mushrooms, lifting it carefully. The thing vibrated like it was alive, glowing hotter and hotter. The first vine struck. Daniel swung the mushroom like a torch. The vine touched it and exploded. Fire and smoke burst out, lighting the clearing. The monster screeched in fury, pulling back its vines, the sound echoing like a dying beast. "Yeah, that's right," Daniel growled under his breath. "Not so hungry now, are you?" But the monster wasn't finished. More vines whipped toward him, faster this time. Daniel grabbed another mushroom, throwing it like a grenade. It burst midair, flames scattering across the vines. The plant shrieked again, recoiling in pain. The alien girl stared in shock, her silver eyes wide. She whispered something again, softer this time, her voice carrying awe instead of fear. Daniel didn't stop. He grabbed her once more, pulling her to her feet. "Come on, while it's hurt." Together they stumbled away from the clearing, smoke rising behind them. The monster's cries grew faint, but Daniel knew it would not give up. Not yet. They finally collapsed near a stream, its water glowing faintly from the bioluminescent stones beneath. Daniel lowered the girl gently. She leaned against a rock, her breathing shallow. For the first time since he'd found her, she tried to speak in broken human tongue. "You save me," she whispered, voice trembling but clear enough. "Why?" Daniel looked at her, surprised. She knew some human words. He gave a small, tired laugh. "Because I couldn't watch you die." Her eyes glistened with something more than fear. Gratitude. Maybe even wonder. But before Daniel could say more, the jungle itself answered. A long howl cut through the night, deep and bone-chilling. Not from the plant, this was something else. Something even bigger. Daniel tightened his grip on the blade. The jungle was not finished with them. Not by far. The stream's glow lit their faces as Daniel crouched beside the alien girl. She looked fragile, her silver skin marked with burns and slime. But there was a quiet strength in her eyes. She had survived the jaws of a monster that could have swallowed her whole. That alone told Daniel she was not ordinary. The water bubbled softly, carrying faint sparks of light. Daniel cupped his hands and brought some to her lips. She drank slowly, her breathing easing just a little. Then she whispered something in her language, words Daniel couldn't understand. Her voice was soft, almost broken, yet it carried weight, like she was speaking a truth that mattered. "I don't know what you're saying," Daniel muttered, shaking his head, "but I'll get you through this. One way or another." The girl surprised him by speaking again, this time in broken human words. Her accent was strange, but her meaning was clear. "They hunt me," Daniel frowned. "Who?" Before she could answer, a distant crack echoed through the jungle. It was not the sound of vines or animals. It was sharper, like a weapon being fired. The girl flinched, eyes wide, staring into the trees as if expecting shadows to appear at any second. Daniel's grip on his blade tightened. His instincts screamed danger. Whoever she was, whatever she was hiding, her enemies were close. "Listen," Daniel said firmly. "If you know something, you need to tell me. I just risked my life to pull you out of that plant's mouth. Why are they hunting you?" The girl trembled. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she turned her gaze toward the glowing water, her reflection shimmering. "My family," she whispered, each word heavy. "They want me gone?" Daniel's eyes widened. He hadn't expected that. "Your family, why?" She pressed her hand against her chest, her face filled with pain that was not only from wounds. "I am heir. They want no heir." The meaning hit Daniel like a stone. She wasn't just some girl lost in the jungle. She was someone important, someone powerful people wanted dead. That explained the trap, the monstrous plant, and now the hunters moving through the trees. Daniel let out a slow breath. "Great, just great. I drag an alien princess out of a monster's mouth, and now I've got assassins on my back." The girl tilted her head, confused by his sarcasm, but she didn't argue. Her silence said enough. The jungle suddenly stirred. Birds with glowing wings erupted from the canopy, fleeing into the sky. The stream rippled as something heavy stepped into it upstream. Daniel tensed, pulling the girl close. From the mist, shapes appeared. Not plants, not animals, men. Alien mercenaries armored in dull plates that blended with the jungle, their weapons glowing faintly. Their eyes scanned the trees, and one of them pointed toward the ground where slime and blood still stained the moss. "They track us," the girl whispered. Daniel cursed under his breath. He looked around quickly. Fighting them head-on would be suicide, not with the girl half dead beside him. He needed another way. He spotted giant roots curling upward into the canopy, forming a natural ladder. He grabbed the girl's hand. "Up now," she hesitated, but his urgency pushed her. Together they climbed, Daniel pulling her up when her strength failed. The mercenaries entered the clearing just as Daniel and the girl hid among the thick leaves above. From their perch, Daniel watched silently. There were 4 mercenaries. One knelt by the ground, touching the slime. He growled something in their tongue. The leader barked orders and they fanned out, searching. Daniel's heart pounded. The girl's body shook against his, her breath shallow, but she stayed quiet. He pressed a finger to his lips, and her silver eyes met his in understanding. The mercenaries passed beneath them, weapons ready, scanning the shadows. For a moment it looked like they would move on, but then one of them stopped, sniffing the air like a predator. His gaze lifted toward the canopy. Daniel's muscles tensed. He gripped his blade, preparing to fight if they were discovered. But the jungle itself saved them. A low hiss came from the shadows, followed by movement. From the undergrowth, dozens of small plant creatures burst forward, tiny versions of the carnivorous monster snapping with sharp teeth. The mercenaries shouted, opening fire. Green acid sprayed, smoke rose, and chaos erupted. Daniel didn't waste the chance. He pulled the girl higher into the canopy, moving silently as the mercenaries fought below. The screams of the plants and the roar of weapons masked their escape. When they finally stopped far above the jungle floor, Daniel helped the girl settle onto a wide branch. She was pale, her energy fading. He looked at her burns again, guilt twisting inside him. He was keeping her alive, but for how long? She touched his arm weakly. "You risked for me." "Why?" Daniel gave a tired smile. Because I don't like seeing good people eaten by plants or hunted like animals. Her eyes softened. For a moment, the fear faded, replaced by something warmer. But then her gaze hardened again, staring into the dark jungle. They won't stop, she whispered. Not until I am dead. Daniel exhaled slowly. He knew she was right. And now, whether he wanted to or not, he was part of her fight. The jungle moaned in the distance, alive with danger. The hunters were still out there. And Daniel realized the real question wasn't whether he could keep her safe. The real question was, why was he willing to? The jungle never slept. Even high in the branches where Daniel and the alien girl rested, the air vibrated with the sounds of clicking insects, distant roars, and the whisper of leaves shifting without wind. The mercenaries were still out there, and Daniel knew that if they stayed in one place too long, they would be found. He leaned against the trunk, blade in hand, scanning the ground far below. The girl sat beside him, her silver skin pale, her body weak from the burns and the slime of the plant. She tried to hide her pain, but Daniel could see it in the way her hands trembled and her breathing came shallow. You can't keep moving like this, he said quietly. Her silver eyes met his. I must. If stop, they find. Daniel couldn't argue. She was right. Resting too long was death. He pushed himself up, offering her his hand. Then let's move. But this time we take the higher path. The canopy was a world of its own. Massive branches stretched across the jungle, forming natural bridges. Strange glowing flowers sprouted between leaves, lighting their way with soft blue light. But the air was filled with dangers too. Spikes of fungus that shot poison when touched. Vines that disguised themselves as harmless ropes before tightening like snakes. Daniel kept the girl close, guiding her carefully. When she stumbled, he steadied her. When a branch shook beneath their weight, he moved quickly, pulling her to safety. Every step was slow, but it was better than facing the hunters below. Half an hour passed. The jungle beneath them grew darker, the mist thicker. Daniel stopped, listening. A sound drifted up through the trees, a low hum, mechanical, steady. His stomach tightened. Drones. The mercenaries had released flying machines, their red eyes glowing as they scanned the jungle canopy. Stay low, Daniel whispered. He pushed the girl down against the branch, covering her with broad leaves. The drones floated past, their beams of light sweeping the forest. Daniel held his breath, gripping his blade tight. The girl's hand trembled against his arm. One drone slowed, hovering. Its red light paused on the leaves where they hid. Daniel's chest clenched. Any second now. He snatched a glowing fruit from a nearby vine and hurled it into the distance. The fruit hit a branch and burst, spraying bright liquid. The drone whirred, chasing the movement. Seconds later, a sharp explosion echoed as the fruit ignited, distracting the machines. The girl stared at him in shock. Daniel only gave a small grin. Earth trick. Works every time, but his grin faded quickly. The drones would report the disturbance. The mercenaries would know they were close. The two of them pressed on, moving faster now. The branches narrowed, forcing them to climb and leap across gaps. The girl's strength faltered, and Daniel had to lift her more than once. Still, she did not complain. Her eyes stayed fixed ahead, determined even as her body shook with fatigue. Finally, they reached a ridge where the canopy opened. From there, Daniel could see across the jungle. It stretched like an endless green sea under the mist, glowing faintly with scattered lights from strange plants. Far in the distance, he saw fire, mercenaries burning a path through the trees, coming closer. The girl's voice broke the silence. You should leave me. Save yourself, Daniel turned sharply, his jaw set. Not happening. You don't understand, she whispered. They want me. If you carry me, you die too. Daniel crouched in front of her, eyes hard. Listen, back home on Earth, we don't just walk away when someone needs help. Not me, not ever. So whether you like it or not, I'm not leaving you here. For a moment, her eyes glistened and something softened in her face. Then she nodded faintly. Then, we run together. The words had barely left her lips when a sharp crack split the air. A branch above them shattered, splinters raining down. Daniel threw himself over the girl as a beam of plasma burned across the canopy. The mercenaries had found them. Go, Daniel shouted, dragging her to her feet. They ran along the branches as more beams sliced through the leaves, burning holes into the jungle. Drones buzzed overhead, their red eyes glowing like angry stars. Daniel swung his blade, cutting through vines in their path. He leapt across a gap, catching the girl's hand just as she slipped. He hauled her up, her body shaking with fear and exhaustion. Behind them, shouts rose as the mercenaries climbed into the canopy. Daniel spotted a hollow trunk ahead. There! They dove inside just as plasma fire scorched the air behind them. The hollow tree was wide enough to crawl through, its inside glowing faintly from moss. Daniel pulled the girl deeper, the sounds of their hunters muffled outside. Inside the darkness, their breaths came fast. The girl leaned against him, her hand clutching his arm. "They won't stop," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his voice low and firm. "Then neither will I." For a long moment, silence filled the hollow. Outside, the jungle raged with fire, plasma, and roars of alien beasts drawn to the fight. But inside, Daniel and the alien girl had a fragile moment of peace, one that wouldn't last. Because the deeper they ran into this jungle, the stranger and deadlier it became. And both of them knew the real danger was still waiting ahead. The hollow tree gave them cover, but Daniel knew it was only a pause. The mercenaries were hunting with drones, fire, and patience. If he and the alien girl stayed too long, they would be cornered. The girl's breathing was shallow, her silver skin dim in the faint glow of the moss. She leaned against the trunk, eyes half closed, but when Daniel crouched near her, she forced herself to sit upright. "You should leave me," she whispered again. Her voice was steady, but her body trembled with exhaustion. Daniel shook his head. "We already had this talk. Not leaving you." She studied him for a moment, then lowered her gaze. "Then you must know truth. If stay with me, you die." Daniel's brows furrowed. He had already guessed she was important, heir, maybe even royalty. But now, with mercenaries burning the jungle just to find her, he knew there was more. "Then tell me," he said firmly. "Who wants you dead? And why?" The girl closed her eyes as if fighting with herself. Finally, she whispered, "I am not just heir, I am key." Daniel leaned closer. "Key to what?" Her silver eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. "My family rules many worlds. My father is High Lord. When he dies, I inherit, but I carry secret inside. A code in my blood. It opens vault. Vault with power to control fleets." Daniel's chest tightened. That explained everything. She wasn't just valuable, she was dangerous to whoever didn't want her in power. Her very existence threatened entire empires. "Your own family betrayed you," Daniel said quietly. She nodded, her voice breaking. "My brother. He wants throne. He sent hunters. The jungle was trap." Daniel clenched his jaw. So it wasn't random. She hadn't just stumbled into a monster's mouth. She had been thrown into it like bait. Before he could speak again, the jungle outside shook with noise. Voices. Heavy boots. The mercenaries were close. Daniel peeked through a crack in the hollow trunk. Shapes moved between the mist, armored men, their helmets glowing faintly. He counted 6 this time. More than before. One of them stepped forward, different from the rest. His armor was black, his helmet marked with red lines. He carried no weapon, only a long staff that pulsed with strange energy. When he spoke, his voice carried authority. "Search every tree," the leader barked in their tongue. The girl must not leave the jungle alive. Kill the human if he resists. Daniel's blood went cold. The leader's voice was cruel, certain. This wasn't just about capturing her. This was an execution mission. The girl gripped Daniel's arm. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror. "That one," she whispered. "He serves my brother. If he finds me, he will cut me open." "Take code." Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't only trying to kill her, they needed her blood, her secret. That meant they wouldn't stop until her body was lying cold on the ground. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay silent. But his mind raced. 6 mercenaries, armed and trained. He had a blade, his wits, and a half-dead girl to protect. The odds were impossible, unless... Daniel scanned the hollow trunk. Moss glowed faintly and roots spread deep into the earth. Then he noticed something. Strange bulges along the roots pulsing faintly like veins. He reached out and touched one. It quivered, releasing a faint hiss of gas. A memory flashed in his mind. Earlier, when he had thrown the glowing fruit, it had exploded. This jungle was alive, yes, but it was also a weapon. He leaned closer to the girl, whispering, "Stay low. Don't move until I say." Her eyes followed him with fear and trust as he slipped to the far side of the hollow trunk. Carefully, he cut into the pulsing root. Gas hissed out, filling the hollow with a faint mist. Daniel covered his nose with cloth, his eyes burning. He lit a spark with the edge of his blade against stone. The gas ignited. A sudden boom rocked the hollow. Flames shot through the cracks, bursting out the side of the tree. The mercenaries outside shouted, stumbling back. Daniel grabbed the girl, pulling her deeper into the roots as smoke covered their escape. The jungle roared with fire. Vines twisted, branches fell, and creatures scattered in panic. Daniel and the girl crawled out the far side, choking on smoke but alive. Behind them, the mercenaries coughed and cursed, regrouping. Daniel pulled the girl onto her feet. "We can't fight them head on. We run." They staggered through the burning jungle. Flames lit the mist, shadows of hunters moving within it. Plasma fire cut through trees, explosions shook the ground. But Daniel kept pushing forward, dragging her when her legs failed. At last, they broke into another clearing. The girl collapsed, gasping for air. Daniel stood guard, blade ready, scanning the shadows. The black-armored leader stepped out of the smoke. His red-marked helmet gleamed in the firelight. His staff crackled with energy as he pointed it toward Daniel. "You are brave, human," the leader said in rough, broken earth language. "But you are fool. That girl is mine." Daniel's muscles tensed. His mind screamed that he couldn't win, not against this. But his heart refused to move aside. He planted his feet, blade steady. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The leader tilted his head, amused. "Then you will die first." The girl's weak voice rose behind Daniel, filled with fear but also defiance. "No, he will not." The firelight flickered across her silver skin, her eyes glowing brighter than before. Something stirred inside her, something Daniel didn't yet understand. The jungle was about to witness a battle it would never forget. The clearing burned with red light from the fires. Smoke coiled upward, mixing with the green mist of the jungle. The alien girl lay weak on the moss, her chest rising and falling slowly, while Daniel stood between her and the black-armored leader. His blade looked small compared to the glowing staff, but he refused to step aside. The leader's voice rumbled through his helmet. "Human, you do not understand what you protect. She carries coat of power. Entire fleets bow to it. Give her to me and you live." Daniel tightened his grip on the blade. His throat was dry, but his voice was steady. "Back home, we don't hand over people to killers. You'll have to fight me." The leader tilted his head, almost amused. He raised his staff, energy crackling at its tip. "So be it." The first strike came like lightning. The staff shot a beam of energy across the clearing. Daniel dove to the side, rolling across the moss. The ground where he had stood exploded, spraying dirt and fire. He coughed, his ears ringing. The mercenaries circled the clearing, their weapons raised. They didn't fire, not yet. Their leader wanted to finish this himself. Daniel knew he had to make that arrogance work in his favor. He darted forward, slashing at the leader's arm. The blade scraped against armor, sparking but not cutting through. The staff swung in response, hitting Daniel in the chest like a hammer. He flew back, crashing against a root. His ribs burned with pain. The girl cried out weakly, her voice cracking. "No!" Daniel forced himself to stand, clutching his blade tighter. His body ached, but his eyes stayed locked on the leader. He refused to let fear show. The leader advanced, slow and confident. "You cannot win. Humans are fragile things." Daniel spat blood onto the moss. "Fragile, maybe, but stubborn." As the leader raised his staff again, Daniel glanced at the ground. The jungle itself seemed to pulse with life. Glowing mushrooms, twitching vines, and strange roots shifting in the smoke. This place wanted to eat everything, even the hunters. Maybe he could use that. When the staff came down, Daniel didn't dodge away. He dodged toward the vines. The beam struck the ground, igniting the roots. The jungle screamed. Vines lashed out wildly, striking at anything nearby, mercenaries included. One soldier was yanked into the air, his weapon clattering to the ground before he vanished into the writhing plants. The leader snarled, spinning his staff to cut through the vines. Daniel seized the moment, rushing in with a slash. The blade cut across the leader's side where the armor jointed. A spray of sparks burst out and the leader stumbled. Daniel pressed the attack, slashing again and again. But the staff blocked, glowing with energy, throwing sparks with each strike. The clash echoed through the clearing like thunder. Behind him, the alien girl struggled to sit up. Her silver skin glowed faintly, brighter than before, as if something inside her was waking. Her trembling hand pressed against the moss and the plants around her twitched, reacting to her touch. Daniel didn't notice. His focus was on surviving the next blow. The leader swung the staff in a wide arc, knocking Daniel's blade aside. The force sent him stumbling, barely keeping his grip. The staff's tip pressed against his chest, humming with deadly power. Die. Human, the leader growled. But before he could strike, a scream erupted. Not from Daniel, but from the jungle itself. The ground split open and a massive carnivorous plant, even larger than the one before, erupted into the clearing. Its maw gaped wide, teeth glistening with slime. The mercenaries shouted in panic as vines whipped across the air. Daniel's eyes widened. He knew he couldn't fight this monster too, but then he saw the truth. The girl was controlling it. Her silver eyes blazed with unnatural light, her voice whispering strange words in her tongue. The plant didn't attack her or Daniel. It attacked the mercenaries. Vines wrapped around two soldiers, pulling them screaming into the maw. Another mercenary fired his weapon wildly, before being crushed under a massive root. The leader turned in fury, shouting orders, but chaos had already consumed his squad. Daniel stumbled back to the girl's side, pulling her up. "That's you? You're doing this?" Her voice shook but carried strength. "The code is not only blood, it is bond. Jungle listens to me." Daniel's mind spun, but he didn't have time for questions. The leader came charging, his staff glowing brighter, cutting through vines like fire through paper. He was coming straight for them. Daniel stood firm, blade ready, even though his arms ached. "Then let's end this together." The girl's glowing hand touched his shoulder. Together. The leader swung his staff, but this time Daniel didn't dodge alone. The vines moved with him, blocking the strike. Daniel lunged, his blade stabbing into the gap he had opened earlier. The steel pierced deeper, cutting through the armor. The leader roared in rage, his staff flaring one last time before the vines wrapped around him, dragging him into the ground. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of fire and the hiss of vines retreating. The clearing was littered with broken weapons and empty armor. The mercenaries were gone. The jungle had devoured them. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. His body ached, his ribs screamed with pain, but he was alive. The girl collapsed beside him, her glow fading as exhaustion overtook her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the jungle whispered, restless but calm. Finally, Daniel looked at her, his voice hoarse. "You're more than an heir, aren't you?" Her eyes, half closed, still glowed faintly. "Yes, I am weapon and crown." Daniel exhaled slowly. He had no idea what that meant for the future. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let her fall into the hands of her enemies, not now. Not ever. The clearing was silent except for the hiss of burning plants. Smoke drifted upward, carrying the smell of acid and ash. The mercenaries were gone, consumed by the jungle they thought they could control. Daniel sat in the dirt, his blade heavy in his hand, every muscle in his body screaming with pain. Beside him, the alien girl lay weak, her silver glow dim but steady. Her breaths were shallow, but her eyes were still open, still watching him. "You saved me again," she whispered. Daniel shook his head, his chest rising and falling. "No, we saved each other." The jungle rustled around them, no longer hostile. It felt like the plants themselves were waiting, listening to the girl's faint heartbeat. Daniel remembered her words. She wasn't only an heir. She was both crown and weapon, but there was no time to rest. A sharp whine cut through the smoky air. Daniel's head snapped up. Above the canopy, a black ship descended, its engines howling, red lights glowing through the mist. The mercenaries may have been swallowed, but their masters had not given up. The girl's brother had sent more. The ship opened its belly and figures dropped down. More soldiers, armored and armed, far more than before. Dozens this time. An entire squad. Daniel's stomach tightened. He could barely stand and the girl could hardly breathe. Facing another wave meant certain death. The girl's hand gripped his sleeve weakly. Her voice was faint but firm. "You must run, leave me. Alone they may spare you." Daniel looked at her, his jaw set. "Not happening. I told you before, I don't leave people behind." "Not you." Her silver eyes glistened. "Then you die with me." Daniel forced himself to his feet, blade in hand. "If that's how it ends, then fine. But I'll make sure they regret every step." The soldiers spread through the clearing, weapons raised. Their leader, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His voice echoed cold through the helmet. "Hand over the air. Human, step aside and you may live." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Yeah, you guys really love saying that, but the answer's the same." He raised his blade. "Come and take her." The soldiers advanced. Plasma fire lit the clearing, scorching the ground. Daniel dodged, rolling across the dirt, barely avoiding the blasts. He slashed at one soldier who came too close, cutting through a gap in the armor. Another swung his weapon at him and Daniel blocked, sparks flying as his blade met metal. But there were too many. A blast struck his shoulder, sending him sprawling. Pain tore through him, his arm going numb. The soldiers closed in, surrounding him. Behind him, the girl pushed herself onto her knees. Her eyes glowed again, brighter than before, her skin shimmering like fire in the smoke. Her voice rose, not weak now but powerful, carrying through the jungle. The ground shook. Roots tore from the earth. Massive vines erupted around the clearing, striking soldiers, dragging them screaming into the dirt. The jungle roared, answering her call. Daniel staggered up, his good arm gripping the blade. "You're doing it again," her voice rang like steel. "No. This time I unleash all." The clearing became chaos. Soldiers fired in every direction, plasma beams cutting vines apart. But for every vine cut, two more rose. The plants fought like an army, crushing metal, breaking bones. Daniel stood beside the girl, defending her from soldiers who slipped through. He cut, slashed, and blocked, his body running only on stubborn will. Every time he thought he would fall, he looked at her glowing eyes and found the strength to fight again. But then the black ship above lowered its cannons. Energy gathered at its belly, aiming to burn the entire clearing. Daniel's heart pounded. If that cannon fired, not even the jungle could protect them. The girl's voice broke through the noise. "Daniel, listen," he glanced at her. She was trembling, glowing brighter and brighter, her body almost too bright to look at. "My code is not only crown, it is choice. I can unleash it fully, but it burns life away. If I do this, I die, but you live." Daniel's eyes widened. "No, there has to be another way." She smiled weakly, tears glistening. "There is not. Freedom or death. That is all left to me." The cannon above roared, ready to fire. Soldiers closed in again. Daniel shook his head violently. "You're not dying here. Not after everything." But her hand touched his face softly. "Then let me do it. For both of us." Before Daniel could stop her, she stood, her body blazing with silver light. She raised her arms, her voice echoing through the jungle in words Daniel couldn't understand. The ground split, roots twisting upward, reaching toward the ship. The light from her body surged into the vines, and together they struck like spears. The cannon fired, too late. The roots pierced the ship, tearing metal apart. The explosion lit the sky, fire raining down as the ship broke in half. The soldiers screamed, their helmets flashing red before the jungle devoured them. The blast threw Daniel backward. When the smoke cleared, the jungle was quiet again. The black ship was nothing but burning wreckage. The mercenaries were gone, but the girl... Daniel crawled to her side. Her glow was fading, her body trembling. She collapsed against him, her silver skin dim. "No, stay with me," Daniel begged, his voice breaking. "You can't go now." Her hand brushed his cheek one last time. Her lips formed soft words. "Thank you, human." Then her glow vanished. She went still. Daniel held her in his arms, the jungle silent around him. His heart felt heavier than the world. He had fought, bled, and refused to give up, and still he couldn't save her. The jungle stirred faintly, leaves whispering. A soft glow spread across the plants as if mourning. Daniel looked down at her face, peaceful in death, and whispered back, "Rest now. I'll carry your story." The fires dimmed. The mist closed in. Alone, Daniel stood in the jungle, blade in hand, his promise heavy. He had faced monsters, mercenaries, and betrayal, but the cost had been everything, freedom or death. She had chosen. And Daniel knew the galaxy would never be the same.